Good morning, everybody, and thank you for coming out. We have at least 19 members of Congress who will be introducing today a 12-page House resolution detailing misconduct at the highest levels of the Department of Justice and Federal Bureau of Investigation. It will be outlining FISA abuse, how and why the Hillary Clinton email probe ended, and how and why the Trump-Russia probe began. This resolution also calls for the appointment of a second special counsel to investigate the gross misconduct, with the understanding that the Justice Department cannot be expected to investigate itself. It's very important to note that the ranks of the DOJ and FBI are filled with amazing, patriotic Americans who love their job, take their oaths seriously, and perform their jobs objectively with much respect for the rule of law. These are historic, legendary agencies that require transparency and accountability regarding the misconduct that took place. It is important for these exceptional public servants and these important agencies to continue their work moving forward stronger than ever before. As the resolution states, the concerns of the American people are serious, and the issues requiring an immediate, unbiased, independent, and thorough investigation are broad. In just the past few days, we learned that the DOJ, FBI, or both, appear to have planted at least one person into Donald Trump's presidential campaign to infiltrate and surveil the campaign. This action alone reminds us of just how necessary this resolution is, as well as the appointment of a second special counsel. First, we will discuss some of the misconduct related to how and why the Hillary Clinton email probe ended. Then we will get into details related to the FISA abuse that took place. And finally, we will discuss the misconduct with regards to how and why the Donald Trump Russia probe began. With regards to Secretary Clinton, federal law and State Department rules, regulations, and protocol were violated with her use of a private email server in her Chappaqua, New York home. Official communications were transmitted on an unsecured server and included emails that contained classified information when they were sent, in addition to other emails which were retroactively deemed classified by the Department of State. Former FBI Director James Comey has acknowledged that 65 of these illicit emails were classified as secret and 22 were classified as top secret. There is significant evidence that the use of this private server by Secretary Clinton was meant to avoid compliance with the Freedom of Information Act, 5 U.S.C. 552, and done to obstruct justice by not having to turn over incriminating emails in the case of a subpoena. Various sensitive emails subject to grand jury and congressional subpoenas were destroyed on Secretary Clinton's private server through the use of BleachBit software and the destruction of hardware before they could be obtained by investigators in March 2015. In a September 2015 meeting between then Attorney General Loretta Lynch and then Director Comey, the Attorney General instructed Director Comey to refer to the Clinton email investigation as a matter, thus watering down the severity of the investigation and aligning the Justice Department's rhetoric with the messaging of the Clinton campaign. Cheryl Mills, who served as counselor and chief of staff to Hillary Clinton during her tenure as Secretary of State, was offered immunity from prosecution in exchange for access to her laptop that contained many of the questionable emails. According to transcripts obtained by the Senate Judiciary Committee, former Director Comey was prepared to exonerate Hillary Clinton as early as April or May of 2016 when he began to draft a statement announcing the end of his investigation before up to 17 key witnesses, including Secretary Clinton herself and several of her closest aides, were even interviewed. Comey contradicted these transcripts when he stated during sworn testimony before the House Judiciary Committee on September 28, 2016, that he made the decision not to recommend criminal charges for Secretary Clinton after she was interviewed by the FBI on July 2, 2016. Director Comey, in the final draft of his statement, allowed FBI agent Peter Strzok to replace grossly negligent, which is legally punishable under federal law, with extremely careless, which is not legally punishable under federal law. Federal law states gross negligence in handling the nation's intelligence can be punished criminally with prison time or fines. There's also the June 27, 2016 infamous meeting between A.G. Lynch and former President Bill Clinton aboard her plane on the tarmac in Phoenix, Arizona. Immediately thereafter, Hillary Clinton was exonerated. On July 5, 2016, Director Comey violated DOJ rules and unilaterally exonerated then presidential candidate Hillary Clinton in a public statement to the media. One day later, on July 6, 2016, an announcement followed from A.G. Lynch that the DOJ investigation into then presidential candidate Hillary Clinton would be formally closed with no charges. In September 2016, the FBI, during an examination of the personal laptop of former Congressman Anthony Weiner as part of an unrelated investigation into him sending sexually explicit messages to a teenage girl, discovered previously unexamined Department of State classified emails belonging to his spouse, top Clinton aide Huma Abedin. It took until October 28th of 2016 for Director Comey to announce via a letter to the chairs of the relevant congressional committees that he was reopening the investigation into Hillary Clinton, an additional egregious delay after the FBI failed to even examine the illicit emails after the FBI discovered them on Anthony Weiner's computer. FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe's wife, Dr. Jill McCabe, was running for Virginia State Senate at the time, and as of October 26th, had received $675,000 in donations from the Virginia Democratic Party and Common Good VA, the leadership PAC controlled by Democratic Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe, a longtime Clinton associate. An investigation conducted by the Office of the DOJ Inspector General noted that on October 27th of 2016, Director Comey required that Deputy Director McCabe remove himself from a conference call regarding the Clinton emails discovered on Anthony Weiner's laptop to avoid the appearance of a conflict of interest after media reports surfaced noting those questionable political donations. Further investigation to whether then FBI Deputy Director McCabe and other FBI officials sought to purposely delay the release of these illicit emails for politically motivated purposes is warranted. Throughout the Obama administration, the DOJ failed to fully investigate serious concerns surrounding former President Clinton, then Secretary of State Clinton, and the Clinton Foundation's connection to the Russian company Uranium One, which received Department of State approval to purchase U.S. uranium mines in 2010. Throughout Hillary Clinton's tenure as Secretary of State, a family foundation controlled by the chairman of Uranium One made $2,350,000 in contributions to the Clinton Foundation, which were not publicly disclosed, in violation of an agreement Secretary Clinton had with the Obama White House to publicly identify all donors. In 2010, while Russian state interests were working to both acquire a majority stake in Uranium One and to purchase American mines, Bill Clinton was paid $500,000 for a speech in Moscow by a Kremlin-linked Russian investment bank that was underwriting Uranium One stock. A confidential informant who worked with the FBI to uncover bribery and other corruption related to the Uranium One matter was threatened with reprisal by the Justice Department under A.G. Lynch when he tried to come forward in 2016. The Senate Judiciary Committee launched a probe in October 2017 to investigate the Uranium One matter, including whether federal departments and agencies such as the Department of State knew the FBI was looking into possible corruption before the deal was approved. An investigation conducted by the Office of the Inspector General noted that a multi-state investigation into the questionable dealings of the Clinton Foundation with corrupt donors was shut down in August of 2016, when pressure was asserted on the FBI by senior officials within the Obama Justice Department. The same IG's report also noted that shutting down this investigation into Clinton Foundation impropriety and influence peddling was connected to high-ranking officials in the DOJ and FBI, including A.G. Lynch, Director Comey, and Deputy Director McCabe. The same IG's report also found that Deputy Director McCabe, after consenting to the political pressure to shut down the Clinton Foundation multi-state investigation, attempted to later use unauthorized leaks to the press to create a false narrative that he was opposed to the closure of the investigation, that he did this in an attempt to salvage his reputation following revelations of questionable Clinton-connected money being donated to his wife's Virginia State Senate campaign. With regards to FISA abuse, in October 2016, the FBI and DOJ used politically biased, unverified sources to obtain warrants issued by the United States Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court of Review, the FISA court, that aided in the surveillance of U.S. citizens, including Carter Page. The warrants grant U.S. intelligence and law enforcement agencies sweeping power to collect bulk information and conduct about collection, which results in surveillance of a broad array of private communications from the past, present, and future, including those of U.S. citizens not specifically targeted in the FISA authorized warrant. To obtain these warrants, FBI and DOJ officials submitted an unverified dossier prepared by Christopher Steele to the FISA court, failing to disclose that Christopher Steele was hired by the firm Fusion GPS, which was hired by the Democratic National Committee and Hillary Clinton campaign to prepare this dossier, and that the source was unreliable and soon thereafter was going to be terminated as a source. The FISA court was not informed that Christopher Steele was actively opposed to the election of Donald Trump, that he was the unnamed source cited in the media reports that the FBI used to corroborate his dossier, and that Fusion GPS had been hired to perform previous anti-Trump research efforts in 2015. The Woods procedures. which are the FBI's mandatory vetting process required for all FISA warrant applications instituted to ensure that all the facts contained in an application are accurate and verified to clearly support probable cause for a warrant, were not followed. Former Director Comey admitted in sworn testimony to the Senate Judiciary Committee on June 8th of 2017 that material contained in the Steele dossier was known to be both salacious and unverified. Since FISA warrant applications are rarely turned down, are almost never subject to appeal, are presented in closed court with no public record, where the government is not challenged by any defense, it is imperative that the government take extra care to validate the information being utilized to build their case before they take the extraordinary step of waiving rights of a U.S. citizen without his or her knowledge or the opportunity to present a defense. At the FISA court, the government has a responsibility not only to provide the best evidence in support of its case, but also the best evidence against its case. These deeply flawed and questionable FISA warrant applications utilizing illicit sources and politically biased intelligence were approved by the DOJ and FBI officials at the highest levels before being submitted to the FISA court. It was further not disclosed to the FISA court that the wife of fourth-ranking DOJ official Bruce Orr worked for Fusion GPS and that Christopher Steele directly transmitted the dossier and other information through Bruce Orr for submission to the FISA court. With regards to the Trump-Russia probe, to this day, there has not been any evidence that Donald Trump colluded with the Russians to win the 2016 election. In fact, there isn't evidence that President Trump committed any crime to win the 2016 election. The initial FBI probe into the Trump campaign and alleged collusion with Russia was launched in July 2016 based on questionable and insufficient intelligence and biased motivations. And as we've learned in recent days, the DOJ, FBI, or both appear to have planted at least one person into Donald Trump's presidential campaign to infiltrate and surveil the campaign. Text messages exchanged between FBI agent Strzok and FBI counsel Lisa Page during the period of August 16, 2015 to May 17, 2017 contain serious evidence of political bias and the improper handling of investigations within the agency. The texts contain egregious evidence of bias, including Lisa Page stating, quote, Trump should go F himself, and Peter Strzok stating, quote, F Trump. Those text messages were not stored within the FBI archive system. An egregious oversight blamed on a technical glitch, and even after these messages were partially recovered by the Bureau's IG in January of 2018, many unanswered questions remain regarding impropriety and bias. Former Director Comey prepared a series of 7 memorandum containing classified information, including notes on his conversations with President Trump. Comey admitted in sworn testimony to the Senate Committee on Intelligence on June 8, 2017, that he had leaked this content to a personal friend and encouraged that friend to share the material with the press in order to trigger a special counsel investigation. An investigation conducted by the Senate Judiciary Committee later revealed that the personal friend of Director Comey was Professor Daniel Richman of Columbia Law School, and that Director Comey provided him with 4 of the 7 memorandum. Director Comey's actions are a clear violation of non-disclosure agreements he signed as a condition of his appointment, and a clear violation of FBI protocols regarding the dissemination of sensitive information outside of the Bureau, which are based on provisions of the Privacy Act of 1974. In March 2018, former FBI Director McCabe was fired by Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who noted that Deputy Director McCabe lacked candor, including under oath on multiple occasions, and had partaken in unauthorized disclosure to the news media, among other violations noted in a report issued by the Office of the IG after a wide-reaching investigation into Deputy Director McCabe's conduct. A myriad of DOJ and FBI personnel have been fired or demoted or have resigned, including FBI Director Comey, Deputy Director McCabe, Chief of Staff to the Director James Rybicki, FBI General Counsel James Baker, FBI Agent Strzok, FBI Counsel Page, FBI Special Agent Josh Campbell, DOJ Senior Official Orr, FBI Assistant Director Michael Cortan, and Assistant Attorney General Peter Kadzik. The DOJ has failed to timely comply with several related document requests by Congress, providing members of Congress with heavily redacted versions of some but not all of the documents demanded, and offering members limited in-person viewing of these documents is an inadequate response to repeated requests after months of delay by the DOJ. As I prepare to introduce my colleagues for their remarks, in conclusion, I would just like to point out that while many in the media and American public have been trying to bring down the president without evidence that President Trump colluded with Russia to win the election, There's a ton of actual evidence of real misconduct that those same people have been attempting to completely sweep under the rug. I believe in equal scales of justice, that no one is above the law. That includes anyone regardless of last name, and that even includes people at the highest levels of the DOJ and FBI, especially when misconduct is committed in the performance of their duties while trying to take down elected officials and candidates. No official at the Justice Department can ever allow their own political bias to overwhelm their own objectivity and responsible performance of their duties. A second special counsel must be appointed, and transparency and accountability is demanded for these great, legendary, historic agencies. With that, we are confident that these great agencies will be able to move forward stronger than they ever were before. At this time, I would like to introduce Congressman Mark Meadows.
Lee, thank you so much for the resolution, the leadership that it takes. And so to be clear, it is the intent of all of the co-signers of this resolution to make a request of our leadership to bring this resolution to the House floor to be voted on to appoint a second special counsel. It is also the position of many in this group that the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, should re-look at his decision to not appoint a second special counsel. The only thing that we have from Mr. Huber to evidence his work so far is an accumulation of frequent flyer miles. There has been no reports, no investigation to speak of, and I can tell you that it is deeply troubling when we talk about transparency, that we're not getting transparency from the FBI and the Department of Justice. That transparency that many times goes without saying. Rod Rosenstein and the Department of Justice, on a number of occasions, when they could tell the truth, remained silent. When Director Comey was out there on his book tour, talking about the fact that he had a friend that he shared the memo with, Rod Rosenstein knew that it was not just a friend, but indeed it was a special government employee. When Director Comey was out there talking about the fact that he only shared it with one friend, Rod Rosenstein knew that he had actually shared it with more than that, and yet the Deputy Attorney General remained silent. And when a number of us brought up the fact that there were redactions of material facts back in January, Rod Rosenstein, again, was silent. Now, perhaps he's not silent when it comes to spinning his narrative. Even today, we continue to see leaks come out of the Department of Justice and FBI spinning a narrative that, quite frankly, is not supported by the facts. So it's time that we get to the facts. It's time that we appoint a second special counsel. And I thank the leadership of Mr. Zeldin and all of those who have co-sponsored. It is time for transparency, and it's time to allow the American people to know the truth.
FBI Director James Comey has been fired. FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe has been fired. FBI General Counsel Jim Baker has been demoted, reassigned. FBI Deputy Director of Counterintelligence Peter Strzok has been demoted and reassigned. FBI Counsel Lisa Page demoted and reassigned. What did all these fired, demoted, and reassigned people do while they were in the Obama administration? They're the ones who ran the Clinton investigation, and they're the ones who launched an investigation into President Trump's campaign. And when they launched that investigation, what did they do? They took this dossier, dressed it all up, made it look like it was legitimate intelligence, took it to a secret court to get a secret warrant to spy on a fellow American citizen. And when they went to the court, they didn't tell them important facts, like who paid for the document. Didn't tell him the DNC and the Clinton campaign paid for it. Didn't tell him that the guy who wrote the document had been fired by the FBI. And yet they took it to a secret court to get a warrant to spy on a fellow American citizen loosely associated with the Trump campaign. And now we learn that they possibly paid informants to spy on the Trump campaign. When you and I go to court, we have to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. They didn't do that when they took the dossier to the court. And now we learn that possibly they paid informants to spy on the Trump campaign. And never forget this fact. In all those text messages back and forth between Lisa Page and Peter Strzok, we have that one on September 2nd, 2016. where they say POTUS, President Obama, POTUS wants to know everything we're doing. And the operative word there is everything. That's a pretty darn big category. And we're supposed to believe the Department of Justice can handle this. That's what they tell us. Don't worry. We can investigate ourselves. We can handle this. Trust us. We'll be just fine. Really? Think about this question. Can Rod Rosenstein oversee an obstruction of justice investigation into the firing of James Comey when he's the guy who wrote the memo recommending the firing of James Comey? So we've been pushing for 10 months for this, and I want to applaud Congressman Zeldin for bringing the resolution to the floor, and Chairman Meadows is exactly right. This should be brought to the floor. We should vote on it, and we should tell the DOJ we are sick and tired of the runaround we've been getting from you guys. It is time to have a special, if this fact pattern doesn't warrant a second special counsel, somebody tell me what does. Somebody tell me what does. So this is exactly what is needed, and I appreciate the gentleman's leadership, and I want this, just like the chairman said, on the floor as quick as it possibly can get, and we can tell the American people we're going to do everything it takes to get answers to the questions that they have.
The IG is supposedly looking into a lot of this stuff, and while I think that the IG, there's an important role for the IG, and I don't think the IG's work is mutually exclusive from what we're trying to do, the fact of the matter is the IG is not equipped with the tools to be able to get the full set of facts, because he doesn't have subpoena power, isn't able to bring people from outside the agency, and he certainly doesn't have any tools to hold anybody accountable for violations of law. I'm eagerly awaiting the IG report that's been going on for almost 15, 16 months about the Hillary case, and maybe someday there'll be an IG report with some of this that will be beneficial, but it is not sufficient in order to get accountability. And some people say, hey, these special counsels, they're unruly, it's just not a good idea. Understand there's a difference between some of the things like Ken Starr and back in the 80s when you had an actual independent counsel, which I think was unconstitutional, Justice Scalia did, but that was operating outside true supervision of the executive branch. Robert Mueller, he's a DOJ employee, basically. He is not an independent, or not supposed to be. He's a special counsel supposedly supervised by Rod Rosenstein. I think the reason why this investigation has become unruly and you're getting into anything under the sun is because Rosenstein never identified a crime to be investigated at the outset, and he's not done anything to keep Mueller on target. I think basically Mueller tells Rosenstein what to do. So with the special counsel, with what we're asking for here, I don't want them involved in all kind of extraneous stuff. Answer the core questions, investigate potential violations of law, and then move on or hold people accountable. That's the way this should be done. And if you had somebody who was supervising that and was serious about keeping the trains on time, then you can do this in a way that I think can be done much more expeditiously than some of these things have previously. Thanks.
Thank you. I, too, am so grateful to Lee Zeldin for his leadership on bringing this resolution. We do need a vote on it quickly, and that has to be on the floor. Now, back when Mueller was appointed, there was nobody any more outraged than I was. I knew of the damage he had done to the FBI. He had purged the FBI of thousands of years of experience, purged the FBI training material so they couldn't recognize radical Islam, and this was falling right into the category of what Mueller was good at, and that is covering his own rear end, and also in this case covering that of Rod Rosenstein. Rosenstein was a U.S. attorney. Mueller was FBI director. Weissman was working on the case as well to investigate Russia's illegal effort to get control of U.S. uranium. They soft-pedaled that, forced their informant to sign a non-disclosure agreement. They had to keep things quiet so the Commission on Foreign Investments in the United States would be able to vote to allow the sale of uranium that would ultimately end up in the hands of Russia. If Mueller and Rosenstein and Weissman let the public know about Russia's illegal efforts. There's no way CFIUS could have approved that sale. And then, of course, the Clinton Foundation wouldn't have gotten their $44 million, along with so much other money that changed hands. So these guys were disqualified. If they had any decency, they would have recused themselves from being able to A, appoint a special counsel, B, be a special counsel. And this is Robert Mueller, who was just shortly before that begging to get the job as director of the FBI. He had no business doing this. I think Eric Holder, although he misrepresented facts before the Judiciary Committee, he was not misrepresenting facts to CNN some weeks back when he said, look, I've known Robert Mueller for 20, 30 years, and he's not going to stop, in essence, until he gets Trump on something. And that is the trouble. We need a special prosecutor to investigate the special prosecutor, to investigate Rosenstein. Just as already been said, Rosenstein is a guy that did the memo saying, let's fire Comey. He had no business being involved in this, but there is a reason. And if Mueller had had any interest in making sure the public knew this was a just and proper action, he would have gone out of his way to hire people who were not connected to the Clintons, to the Democratic Party. That way, people would know that this is a just and fair action. No, but since it was not just and fair, they needed people that would cover themselves and cover Mueller and Rosenstein and Weissman. So that's where that's happened. It was June of last year. I told President Trump, look, nobody needs firing more than Robert Mueller, but you can't be the one to fire him because we got some weak-kneed Republicans out there who will say they'll come after you if you fire the guy that needs firing. But you can appoint a special counsel, and that's what we needed then. It's what we needed now. And like any good idea, it just takes a while for it to catch on. Now it is apparent to some of the people I have great respect for right here behind me, and I'm hoping we'll finally get a vote and force this thing to a head. Thank you.
I'm just wondering, what is the standard for the appointment of a special counsel at the Department of Justice? You have Rosenstein appoint a special counsel to investigate the president based on a slow boil suspicion of Carter Page, a Papadopoulos memo written by Peter Strzok, who's subsequently been demoted and reassigned, and a dossier that was paid for by the DNC in the Clinton campaign and curated in part by Russians. So if that gets you a special counsel where, you know, at one moment you got Rosenstein sitting next to Mueller, pitching Mueller as the replacement for James Comey, and not 24 hours later, after it became clear the president was not going to hire Mueller, you've got Rosenstein selecting Mueller to be the special counsel. Here, the factual basis seems to be a lot stronger. Mr. Zeldin showed great leadership. He laid that out. And Speaker Ryan has always said to all of us, he wants a House that has a bottom-up process, that's organic in its activities. 10 months ago, members of the Judiciary Committee began calling for a second special counsel. At the committee leadership level, Chairman Bob Goodlatte of the Judiciary Committee, Chairman Trey Gowdy of the Oversight Committee also called for a second special counsel. When Mr. Zeldin sent a letter to the Attorney General, he was joined by the Majority Leader, Kevin McCarthy, the Majority Whip, Steve Scalise. So we have done what has been asked of us as the membership. We've uncovered the true facts. We've persuaded leadership at the committee level and at the conference level, and now we need Speaker Ryan to put this resolution on the floor so that the full House of Representatives can answer the question about the legitimacy and the need for a second special counsel to investigate what I perceive to be very serious crimes and improprieties at the FBI and the Department of Justice.
I'm Jody Heiss from Georgia's 10th District. I also want to thank Lee Zeldin for his leadership on this and the leadership of every person on this stage for keeping this issue on the forefront. Let me just kind of bring this down as to why this matters to the American people. We've heard a lot of specifics, but what does this matter specifically to the American people? Well, truth, justice, and transparency are not partisan issues or concepts. They are the backbone of American government. And when we begin to allow people to ignore the rule of law or to set a standard of their own to abide by, then it becomes our responsibility to shine light on that, and in this case, to conduct an impartial investigation. There can be no question at this point, as it appears so evident, that the FBI and the Department of Justice, at the bottom line, wanted Hillary Clinton to not be indicted, and they did not want Donald Trump to be the President of the United States. This ought to be a grave concern to every citizen in this country. In light of all the serious issues that have been raised, the allegations, we've got to get to the bottom of this to determine whether or not the Department of Justice and the FBI tip the scales of justice. We've got to get to the bottom of whether or not their attempts were to benefit one political candidate to the harm of another, and we've got to get to the bottom of the issue as to whether or not they circumvented the rule of law. And so it is time for our leadership to exhibit leadership and to get this resolution to the floor for a vote. The credibility, obviously, of the Department of Justice and FBI is at stake, but what is also at stake is the ability of the American people to trust their government, the FBI, the Department of Justice, Congress, all of us who are in this role to get to the bottom of this. So again, thank each of you for being here this afternoon. And again, Mr. Zeldin and those behind me, it's time we get to the bottom of this. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here. Claudia Tenney, 22nd District. I'm really just grateful that my colleague from New York, Lee Zeldin, has got the tenacity to keep on this issue. I'm happy to join him. I'm also happy to join our colleague, Representative Ron DeSantis. On our letter, we outline very clearly the points that were made, that what we think are potential violations of law, and ask them to look into these issues, and we're still waiting. And it's really important that we restore the integrity of the FBI and the Department of Justice so that we have equal justice under law, so that the American citizens know that what we're going to be doing is looking at everything equally and not just picking winners and losers based on political lines. This seems to me like if the tables were turned, this would be another modern-day Watergate. And right now, I think we need to really look into this. I think a second counsel is our only option at this point. And I applaud all my colleagues, echo their sentiments. This is something we really have to do if we're going to stand up for the citizens of this nation. And I just want to say thank you to Lee and to everyone here for standing strong on this issue, and for all of you for hopefully reporting this and getting it out there so the American people know that we are going to be standing for equal justice under law. Thank you.
Paul Gosta from Arizona's 4th, and you wonder why this matters. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. How many things have we had to see in government oversight, from Fast and Furious to IRS to the reporters delegation? Once again, Article 1, Section 8 gives us this power and purview to oversee this application. Benjamin Franklin was asked, what kind of government did you give us? A republic if you can keep it. And the fundamental aspect of a republic is to hold everybody equally accountable to the rule of law. When you look at all the things that Mr. Zeldin actually orchestrated and you start tying these pieces together, this was an orchestrated campaign against a duly elected government. That's why there's nothing short of treason for those that actually participated in that FISA or participated in this. The American people deserve the facts, they need the truth, and they need to know that everybody is held to the same standard of the law.
Morning, Andy Biggs from Arizona's 5th District. I'm thankful to Lee Zeldin for bringing this forward and my colleagues behind me who have spoken, and I'm reminded of what an former Arizona congressman said. Everything's been said, just hasn't been said by everybody yet. So I'm going to take a minute to just tell you my little view of this. What has been said is dynamite. It's a scandal of our time, scandal perhaps of our lifetime. There's two key components here that need to be really explored, that were set forth but need to be really outlined more. Number one, and Congressman Jordan mentioned it, and that is reference to the former administration where the president was to be informed of all things going on. We need to know really what that meant. We need to know how high this scandal went. That's imperative. Number two, the apparent motivation for all of this misconduct, going right back to the Clinton scandal, right on into the current scandal, is political in nature. That is antithetical to what the founding of this country and the fabric of this nation today should be and was. Those two things right there are things we need to continue to investigate. We need a special counsel to go forward and investigate everything that we've iterated in this resolution. But moreover, we need to get to the bottom of what the previous president knew with regard to this misconduct. And we also need to know why this abuse of power was performed for political purposes, because that can never happen in this country again.
I'm David Rouser, represent Southeastern North Carolina, 7th District, and I want to applaud my colleagues for their leadership on this. I'm proud to be here to stand with them. I firmly believe that obviously our country is divided. A lot of folks are divided in terms of their opinion of our president, but I also think that the vast majority of Americans believe in a fair process. I'll be candid and say that I'm not a big fan of special counsels, but I think one is necessary in this particular matter moving forward so that we can help to create a much more fair process and get to the real truth of the matter. And I too encourage our leadership to bring this to the floor. The American people deserve the truth. And not only that, it's imperative, I believe, for the future and survival of our republic. Thank you.
I'd like to thank all of my colleagues who are here, the chairs and committee members of the House Intelligence Committee, Judiciary Committee, Oversight and Government Reform, the House and the Senate, for all of their hard work to be able to uncover all these facts. And we'd be happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Councilman and to anyone up there, can you talk to us about your discussions with House leadership, and if you talked to anyone at the White House about this idea, and why is it coming up with a vote? That seems to be your prime audience right now.
We haven't even introduced it yet. We'll be introducing it here in the coming hours. We would encourage all of our colleagues interested in this issue to sign on. We'll be engaging with all of our colleagues, regardless of whether they sign on, to be able to discuss this issue with them. And we certainly would like to see a vote on the House floor. The resolution will be introduced in the coming hours.
But have you discussed this with House leadership?
So there have been a number of conversations with our House leadership in terms of the frustration of where we are with these documents, but also the need for a second special counsel. I think it's been outlined already that we have members of leadership that have called for it, members, chairmen of committee that have done so. And so, yes, they're fully aware. At this point, it's a drastic step, but quite frankly, these are drastic facts that continue to bubble to the surface, and it's time that we get a response. And so I don't know that they will be surprised by any of the demands of this request. The resolution obviously is something that Mr. Zeldin has taken the lead on, and we plan to have further conversations on that.
Congressman Meadows, could you just give us, I know it's a little bit hour by hour, an update on where things stand with this meeting that was worked out at the White House where you are supposedly going to be able to view some of these documents?
Well, obviously, the president had a meeting with DOJ officials yesterday and FBI officials yesterday. I applaud him for his spirit of transparency. I can tell you in my conversations with the president, he has been concerned about one thing, and that's transparency with the American people. That meeting yesterday obviously gives us great hope that the documents will actually be able to be reviewed by the appropriate Intel Committee members, not broadly by Congress.
Democrats and Republicans?
Certainly, I would think that you would have ranking members as well if they wanted to view those documents. I think there's probably more interest on our side because the allegation of wrongdoing certainly would be supported more by our side than the Democrat colleagues. But at this point, my understanding is in the coming days, indeed this week, that Chairman Nunes and Chairman Gowdy certainly will be able to view those documents. Now, listen, we've been here before. We've had a lot of rhetoric. And, quite frankly, we've had very little action. And so I'm not optimistic that that will actually happen, but I can tell you that at this point, that's what we're hopeful for.
If it's another meeting to talk about seeing records versus actually getting access to the records, will Republicans refuse to attend?
Well, I can tell you another meeting without evidence and without actually seeing the documents is worthless. We've been in this. There are 2 subpoenas that are outstanding that have not been complied with. From Oversight and Judiciary, we've had a subpoena, well, actually a request since November, but a subpoena that is there. This president has turned over 1.2 million documents to the special counsel Mueller. And yet our DOJ and FBI in a 7-month period has delivered less than 19,000 documents out of a possible 1.2 million documents. Most of those are duplicative. And it is time that we get to see the documents. And so just having a briefing is not what we're talking about. We actually need to see the documents. We believe that we have a clear understanding of what's there.
I have a follow-up question for Congressman Meadows or whoever wants to take it. Putting media reports to one side, what does the evidence show about the number of informants that were used to target the Trump campaign?
Yeah, I think at this particular point, that would be in a classified setting, and I'm not privy to that. As you know, we've had a number of documents that we've reviewed in a non-classified settings where you can make the argument that there was more than one, but that is certainly not something that I would be privy to and can't speak with authority on.
Just want to follow up. Go ahead.
Mr. Meadows and Mr. Gaetz, you guys talked to President Trump often. Have you guys talked to him about this? Has he asked for this?
We sent him a letter last week.
Have you spoken with them?
But has Trump asked for this?
Listen, this initiative is driven by Mr. Zeldin and certainly members of the House, and for us to suggest that the president has requested a second special counsel, that's not the fact, not in any conversations that I've had with him, and I normally do not comment on any conversations I've had, but I can specifically say with that one, he has not requested this.
But have you spoken
Same
with
answer.
him about this idea in general, about a second special counsel?
I could just say, as the author of this resolution, I have not had any conversations at all with the president with regards to this resolution and the call for a second special counsel. This has been 100% a product of talking to the colleagues, to my colleagues who are signing on to the resolution, 100%.
I had a clarification question, I think it's for Congressman Zeldin, on Bruce Orr. Does the evidence show that Bruce Orr was given information by his wife, who worked for Fusion GPS, and that information was used to either obtain or renew a FISA order?
Bruce Orr was in direct communication with Christopher Steele directly. So there is no doubt that that connection, that conflict was real and one that resulted in information being passed through Bruce Orr to the Justice Department, to the FISA court as an intermediary.
Just really quickly.
Did you want to add something on that, Jim?
To whoever. I've spoken to other more moderate members of your caucus, one of whom used the word crazy to describe all of you in this effort. Can you respond to that?
You want to give us the name? I'll be glad.
Yeah. In what context? This resolution specifically?
This effort,
Well,
yes. This pursuit. Please.
That a separate and equal branch of government wants the information it's entitled to do the constitutional duty of oversight for the American people? If that's crazy, you got to take that up with the guys who wrote the Constitution, because that's exactly what we're supposed to do. So just give us the stuff. Give us the information that we're entitled to see so we can get answers to the questions that the American people have, that we have, and frankly, that all of you in the press have. So that's exactly what we're supposed to do. This, because we've been so frustrated, this is an effort that has to happen to get to the bottom of all this.
And Casey, let me just, there is no one who's read more of these documents personally than I have. So I would challenge any of my colleagues, if they want to be informed on the probable cause and the real reason for us requesting that, they can come and we can spend weeks reading over the documents that I've read over the last 7 months, and I can assure you there's a there there.
Yeah, and I would just add that what seems crazy is when you have the former Attorney General meeting with the former president, the husband of the target of an investigation on the tarmac, and then immediately exonerating Hillary Clinton. What seems crazy to me is that Bruce Orr, whose wife works at Fusion GPS, is serving as an intermediary with Christopher Steele. It seems crazy to me that James Comey would be writing an exoneration before interviewing Secretary Clinton and all of her closest aides who weren't yet to be interviewed. What seems crazy to me is that you would go to a FISA court and be presenting this dossier and not be telling the FISA judges that the information is unverified, that it was paid for by Hillary Clinton and the Democratic National Committee, and providing all the other information that was important for those FISA judges, not only to know what the government's best evidence were, but also what the government's worst evidence was. So, as far as what's crazy about all of this is the fact that every single thing in that resolution is accurate. That's crazy. Take one last question. Two less. One. Yes.
As it relates to some of these document requests that continue to be made at the Justice Department, there's reluctance on the part of the Justice Department to turn those over, not simply because of the classified nature of the requests and some of the materials involved, but also because this is an ongoing investigation. There's concern about potentially sharing with the potential subjects of an investigation materials relevant to their investigation. Is that proper? Should the White House ensure that the President himself, former officials, are walled off from any materials that might be shared? And can you commit that members of Congress are not sharing with the White House any of these sensitive documents that might be helpful to the President and his legal team as they prepare potentially for immediate?
Pardon us for our skepticism on the Department of Justice's filtering of the information they provide Congress. We've already caught them redacting information that was not redacted as a consequence of any national security concern or any sources and methods concern, but because it was personally embarrassing to them that they were talking about their relationship with a judge who might oversee hearings. So the Department of Justice has lost their credibility to self-filter based on their own conduct. And look, I mean, a second special counsel solves back against that concern, because if a second special counsel is appointed, you have independent eyes that are able to collect the evidence, make a review, and then bring an action forward. And so you could in essence divorce those concerns from a process that had more integrity, and we think that Mr. Zeldin has laid out that correct process.
Yeah, and I would just add that all the concerns about not being able to provide information for national security concerns, and then you provide the information and you see that there's nothing in there that risks national security, happens time and time again. The facts are, after you actually end up reading the documents, that the real reason while they were saying national security was that it would cause embarrassment to people who did the wrong thing. Last question.
So you all have made it clear that you're pursuing this information because the American people deserve transparency, but you didn't really get around to the question, did the president encourage this effort at all?
I answered black and white, 100%, absolutely not. I will tell you,
None of you have had conversations with the president about this.
from those who answered the earlier question, they said the same. I could just, speaking for myself as the author of this resolution, 100% of my conversations, of my interactions with anyone has been working directly with my colleagues who are signing on to this resolution. This was a product of those discussions entirely, and I have not spoken to the president in any way, shape, or form as far as the subject of the contents and the purpose of this resolution.
All right,
Thank you
very much, everyone.
Thank you, guys.